To tell you the truth, sometimes I just want Ayanokoji to marry and have 3 beautiful children with Chabashira. They will open their own cake shop in the middle of a small town and name their kid after Kei and Hiyori. I know that sounds crazy, but Ayanokoji was named after his mother's lover, so there is no reason Ayanokoji wouldn't name his kids after Kei. However, instead of that peak fiction, we are currently faced with the situation where it's highly possible that Ayanokoji wouldn't end up with anyone. Since Ayanokoji will return to the White Room, we will definitely say goodbye to the ordinary heroines such as Kei and Hiyori, because they most likely wouldn't have any importance in the future. However, a few girls like Horikita or Ichinose still have their chance, but let's just put our hopes at a mediocre level. First, let's take a look at Ayanokoji's condition after he graduates from high school. Unless there will be a very big plot twist in the story, Ayanokoji will most likely return to the White Room and be put under his father's control. From that point, he will become a toy and lose his freedom, at least until some dramatic change happens to Atsuomi, where he will need Ayanokoji's help. Atsuomi will most likely need Ayanokoji's help in the political world, and if he already prepares Ayanokoji to become a senator or parliament member, that means Ayanokoji will have a lot of contact with the outside and not be caged in the White Room. If that is really the case, Ayanokoji will have two choices in his hand. Either he keeps following his father's order, or start to fight him. If Ayanokoji chooses to obey his father, then the only possible option for his marriage will be a political marriage. I know that sounds really old-fashioned, but political marriages still exist and are effective even up to this day. His wife candidate could be an unknown person who we have no idea about, but if we take a look at the current heroines, Sakayanagi fits that criteria the most. She has a strong tie with the political and business world, and since politics are always unpredictable, it wouldn't be impossible for Chairman Sakayanagi to change sides and support Atsuomi. Ayanokoji cannot refuse, and Sakayanagi wouldn't refuse, but knowing Sakayanagi, she wouldn't want her marriage with Ayanokoji to end up like that, and since her father is doting on her, this marriage has a low chance to happen. The only other possible candidate for political marriage is Kiryuin, but since she said she wanted to be free from her family, it's hard to say we will ever see her again. Not to mention that her relationship with Ayanokoji is far from being a romance and also not so well developed, so their marriage will create quite an uproar among fans. If there will be a political marriage, it would be better if it's a new girl that we have never seen before. It could create a lot of possible conflict and also an excuse to draw more female characters. Adding another girl in the story is also a good move to replace the high school heroines that we will never see again, and since it's a political marriage, the political plot and the romance could develop together without cannibalizing each other. And now let's talk about the future where Ayanokoji joins politics. Just like what I said in the beginning, we will eventually say goodbye to a lot of girls who have no tie with the bigger world outside the school. Characters like Kei, Hiyori, and also Chabashiro wouldn't have any reason to appear in the sequel, so their chance to become Ayanokoji's wife will eventually drop to zero. Even though Hiyori is currently the frontrunner in the romance plot, and Kei still has a chance to get back together with Ayanokoji, they didn't have what the other girls had, which is a connection to Ayanokoji's background. This is really important because someday Ayanokoji will return to the White Room, and returning to the White Room means severing all his ties in ANHS. Kei and Hiyori will graduate from school, and they might never see Ayanokoji again. However, a few girls like Horikita and Ichinose have a chance to meet him again. For example, in Volume 12.5 Side Story, the narrator mentioned that Horikita is destined to meet Atsuomi again. Since Atsuomi is a dangerous person in the political world, it makes the most sense that Horikita could only meet him if she became the politician herself. The newest volume epilogue also strengthens this theory, where it's mentioned that Horikita will learn about Ayanokoji's true origin and the horrible ending waiting for him. If we put the horrible ending aside, it's practically confirmed that Horikita will be the witness of Ayanokoji's journey even after he leaves the school. And since Volume 12.5 decided to make Horikita fall in love with him, that means we should expect a more complex relationship from the two of them. Honestly speaking, Horikita has the highest chance to become Ayanokoji's wife at the very end of the story. She is the first girl who meets Ayanokoji in school, and they have a long story from being neighbors to becoming closest allies. If we are following the patterns of romance series, Horikita as the first girl with the long black hair should have easily won from the start, but the twist with Karizawa K delayed her development from that path. The newest volume also creates an even deeper connection between them, where Horikita tries to know as much as she can about Ayanokoji's past, to the point she even tries to meet Atsuomi. Even if we look at Ayanokoji's perspective, the whole reason why he tried to create a balance between the four classes was because he wanted to test Horikita, so it's highly possible that their deep complex affection toward each other will eventually find its way. After Horikita learns about Ayanokoji's past, she will most likely try to save him, and that is probably the trigger that will awaken Ayanokoji's feelings. However, Horikita is not the only one who tries to know more about Ayanokoji's past. Even if she didn't really show it, Ichinose might be the most curious person when it comes to Ayanokoji. The fact that she keeps remembering the word white room that she accidentally heard is enough to prove her curiosity, but unlike Horikita, Ichinose is way harder to understand. From Ayanokoji's perspective, Ichinose is actually a dangerous person to be around, since he has no idea how far Ichinose could act. She undoubtedly loves Ayanokoji, but she doesn't actively try to find out more about Ayanokoji's past. However, she keeps what she heard and use it at the right time. It's hard to predict if Ichinose will change in the rest of her school year, but if she is not and she is still crazy about Ayanokoji, then she will definitely try to find him again after graduation. There should be a few ways for her to locate him, and if someday Ayanokoji really becomes a politician, his name will definitely appear on the internet, and that should be enough for Ichinose to close their distance. However, there is also another possibility where Ayanokoji chose to keep in contact with Ichinose even after graduation, because he believed he could use her even further. Let's just say Ayanokoji needs more pawns to face his father, so he tells Ichinose his plan and what she needs to do. Ichinose will be useful in a lot of fields thanks to her talent, and if Ayanokoji falls even further, he could even use her just like how his father used his mother. Predicting Ichinose's future is honestly uncomfortable, but if Ayanokoji walks into the darker path, then the chance of him marrying Ichinose exists. Of course it wouldn't be a marriage based on love, but simply a contract just like what his parents did. Whether Ichinose is satisfied with that will be another issue, but together with Horikita, they are actually the closest to win this war. There are a few more characters that have a chance to become Ayanokoji's wife, but so far they are not yet developed in that way. Characters like Ichika have a deep tie with Ayanokoji because they came from the same facility, and since the White Room will need a lot of babies for the future generation, their combination of genes will be a very precious sample, and since we know Atsuomi has a few screws loose in his head, it's not impossible for him to actually order them to do that. If we are talking about Atsuomi connection even further, Tsubasa and Shiraishi also have the opportunity. We still didn't know where they actually sided or what their role will be in the future, but at least they have a better chance compared to Hiyori and Kei. They could become a candidate for political marriage, or maybe a comrade that fight for their freedom. But once again, they are not yet developed in that way, so it's a bit hard to imagine they ended up together with Ayanokoji. And the last person we need to mention is none other than the girl who loved Ayanokoji for the longest. Yuki is indeed absent from the NHS story, but her role might be more crucial compared to the others. She is a student of White Room 4th generation alongside Ayanokoji, and she has a little sister who is currently attending ANHS. The fact that Ayanokoji remember her in the Volume 1 third year arc, and has gotten curious about what happened to her might be a clue that will reunite them in the future. They had gone through a lot together, and even since Yuki left the White Room, she always worried about Ayanokoji's well-being. Even if she only appears in one volume, her love story is so tragic that it deserves a happy ending. However, this is all just speculation. We still didn't know how this story would end, or when the next twist would appear. It's highly possible for this story to end with an open ending, or maybe a bad ending where Ayanokoji will die at the end. That's why we need to savor the current romantic plot with Hiyori, because this might be the last chance for Ayanokoji to actually fall in love.